Hill yesterday to plead for $34 billion in federal aid to bail out their industry. The company's CEOs all drove to Washington in hybrid vehicles after being criticized for flying in for hearings last month in separate private jets. That time around, they were sent home empty-handed, with congressional Democratic leaders demanding detailed business and spending plans from GM, Ford, and Chrysler. The company submitted those turnaround plans before the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday, promising major changes such as producing smaller, more fuel-efficient cars, reducing vehicle models, and slashing executive pay and bonuses. This is Richard Wagner, CEO of General Motors, speaking to reporters after the hearing.
The auto industry is an important one for the economy, and obviously it's under tremendous pressure in part because of the global financial crisis. So we put forth a plan which we think adjusts our business to a smaller market.
Financially, GM is the most desperate of the big three. The company said it faced bankruptcy without $4 billion in federal loans by the end of the month, with billions more needed in 2009. But lawmakers said they were not convinced that the automakers could return to profitability, even with a massive infusion of government cash. After a 6-hour hearing, Senator Chris Dodd, the chair of the Senate Banking Committee, said he would try to assemble a plan to revive the automakers, asserting that inaction is not an option.
A partial or complete failure of the domestic automobile industry would have ramifications far beyond manufacturing and pensions. It would affect virtually every sector of our economy. That includes the financial sector, which is a particular focus of this committee. A collapse within the auto sector would unquestionably worsen the credit crisis.
Dodd supports a taxpayer rescue, but called on the Bush administration or the Federal Reserve to save the automakers because Congress might not do so. Dodd said Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson must explain why the car companies, which support 1 in 10 U.S. jobs, are less deserving of assistance than Wall Street banks and insurance companies, which received a $700 billion financial rescue program in September.
The chief executives of the Big Three scheduled to appear again today before the House Financial Services Committee, with opposition to an auto industry bailout strong among Republicans and even among many Democrats. Congressional leaders have given themselves 1 week to make something happen. Wendy Thompson is a retired worker at American Axle in Detroit and the former president of UAW Local 235. She joins us from Detroit, where she's helping organize a caravan of auto workers to Washington, D.C., scheduled to arrive Monday morning. Ralph Nader, longtime consumer advocate, former presidential candidate, he catapulted to fame decades ago with his book Unsafe at Any Speed, which took on the auto industry. He joins us on the telephone from Washington, D.C. Let's start with Wendy Thompson. What do you think needs to happen right now?
Well, we're going to Washington in a caravan because we think it's very important that a rank-and-file worker point of view come into this debate. We don't think it's a question of saving corporations. It's a question of saving an industry, a question of saving working-class communities and the heartland of America. And we think a comprehensive reform industry has to happen. Our suggestion is to expand the industry to become transportation-based and alternative energy-based. We say that instead of closing these factories, why don't we start to build products like light rail for mass transit or wind turbines for alternative energy. There is work that needs to be done to create a new society here in America, and a lot is at stake.
Wendy Thompson, your union has been basically backing the company CEOs in this effort to get a bailout, but at the same time, there are many Republicans, especially in the Congress, who see the contracts that the unions have had over the years as part of the problem that the automakers have. They claim that the labor costs of the auto companies are out of whack with other automobile companies, especially the Japanese companies. Your response to those criticisms?
The solution to the problem is not to take away more from workers that have already had so much taken from them. And it's a downward spiral. If they attack the decent paying jobs, then no one is going to have a decent paying job in the end. And this is not going to help us certainly get out of the economic crisis we're in. We are going to Washington not just for ourselves as auto workers, but for all American working people, because we think that unions and union wages is what's going to bring this country forward, not set it back. But we do feel that you do need government intervention here, that the corporations have not been pursuing the right path. And after all, the government is supposed to represent the people, and they should have oversight. And in fact, like they say, taxation without representation, well, if the American working people are investing in these corporations, they should have representation too.
Compare, Wendy Thompson, the $700 billion bailout for the financial industry to what the automakers are asking for, and lay out the message you're taking to Washington. I mean, you're going big with these demands. So if you're saying if they should get the bailout, what they should have to do, from saving auto workers' jobs to single-payer health care.
That's right. We are asking for big changes because that's what's necessary. We think that as auto workers that we have to stand firmly with saving the environment and saving the planet, and that if the auto corporations aren't doing it, the people have to take control here and say this is what has to happen. And that's the point of view we want to get across. We represent all working people.
Ralph Nader, you have been a long time a critic in the past of the auto industry. Your perspective now on them coming to Congress and asking for this bailout?
Well, first of all, it needs to be made clear that the workers and the UAW have given up far more than what the government subsidy will come down to in dollars if what the auto companies are asking for is accepted by Congress. They gave up huge billions of dollars in 2007, and they're giving up more in 2008. And what this whole debate is lacking is any concept of numbers. For example, if this is a $34 billion so-called bailout, what is it really? Well, it's subsidized loans, or maybe they'll turn it into loan guarantees. And depending on what the government gets in return, that is a fraction of what, as Amy said, of what Citibank and the financial industries have gotten in New York. The reason why there's so much focus on this, on the auto companies, is not just its role in the American economy, but it's public. There are congressional hearings where the wave of gigantic bailout after bailout of Wall Street occurred largely on weekends in secret meetings between the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, and the Goliaths on Wall Street. And these were sweetheart deals. Citibank got a huge sweetheart deal with very, very little reciprocity. Now, if the Congress is going to move to save the domestic auto industry, they're going to do it as taxpayers, as shareholders, as creditors, and they ought to drive a hard bargain. And as a result, the taxpayer can get preferred shares. They can get warrants so that if the companies recover, the taxpayer gets not just the money back, but a huge surplus. I mean, Ford Motor Company stock now is around $2.60. If Ford modestly recovers, it could go to $20. And, of course, those Treasury warrants and preferred shares would come out very, very handsomely, as they did in the Chrysler bailout when Iacocca turned it around in 1980 and 81. So what I think should be done is for the government to say, okay, you want our help, we are going to own a part of you. We are going to be creditors and restructure you, remove the board of directors and the executives that are deemed not to be performing over the years, put people who know how to produce fuel-efficient, emission-controlled, safe motor vehicles in place, and reform the whole area of shareholder rights, because the government will be a shareholder. And since the government is effectively an insurer, they can move to apply the principle of insurance and loss prevention and produce motor vehicles and alternative transit, mass transit, that will damage less people on the highway and the environment. So I call it government capitalism, where the government plays the role of a shareholder, the role of a creditor, the role of an insurer, and restructures the entire industry. I must say, on the UAW, though, the biggest mistake the UAW ever made in this area was to support, for 30 years, against consumer and environmental groups on Capitol Hill, a freeze on fuel efficiency. And because the government could not upgrade its fuel efficiency for over 30 years from the 1975 standards, the Japanese and other foreign competitors were able to eat into the market share of the domestic industry. And I'm glad to hear Wendy say that it seems like some workers, at least, understand that that's got to change.
Wendy Thompson.
Yes, I do feel that